Unmoglish, impossible. That was the word whispered through British intelligence offices on August 1st, 1944. American General George S. Patton had just broken out of Normandy and announced his intention to sweep across France faster than any army in modern history. British intelligence, with their meticulous analysis and careful calculations, predicted Patton would take 3 weeks to reach the Seine River. He did it in 6 days. They predicted he couldn't possibly advance beyond the Meuse before mid-September. He crossed it in early September ahead of schedule. Every prediction, every careful estimate, every intelligence assessment, Patton shattered them all. And Winston Churchill, Britain's prime minister, who had seen every military campaign from the trenches of World War I to the deserts of North Africa, found himself confronting an uncomfortable truth. The Americans, whom British commanders had quietly doubted, had produced a general who operated at a speed that defied everything the British military establishment understood about warfare. What Churchill said, both publicly and in private, revealed admiration, frustration, political calculation, and the dawning realization that American military power had arrived not just with force, but with unprecedented operational tempo. This is the story of those words, those moments, and how Patton's impossible speed forced Churchill to recalibrate everything he thought he knew about his American allies. If you're fascinated by the untold moments when history's greatest leaders were forced to confront the impossible, hit that subscribe button right now. We're diving deep into the words they actually said, the private thoughts they revealed, and the human reactions behind the legendary decisions. Drop a comment telling us what aspect of Churchill and Patton's dynamic fascinates you most, or simply let us know where you're watching from. This is history told from perspectives you won't find in textbooks. And we've got incredible content coming your way. July 25th, 1944. Operation Cobra, the American breakout from Normandy, had begun. For 6 weeks, Allied forces had been grinding through the hedge of Normandy, gaining yards at tremendous cost. British forces under Montgomery were locked in brutal fighting around Caen. American forces were similarly bogged down. The breakout seemed impossible. Then Patton's Third Army became operational. Within hours, everything changed. British intelligence officers at 21st Army Group headquarters, Montgomery's command, had prepared detailed assessments of how quickly American forces could exploit any breakthrough. Their analysis, based on doctrine, logistics capabilities, and historical precedent, concluded that even if the breakout succeeded, American forces would need 10 to 14 days to reorganize, consolidate, and begin exploitation. The assessment noted that American commanders, while aggressive, lacked the operational sophistication of German panzer commanders or British armored doctrine. One intelligence summary stated, "American forces excel at attrition warfare, but have not yet demonstrated the capability for sustained mobile operations at operational tempo." These assessments reached Churchill's desk on July 26th. He was at Chequers, his country retreat, reviewing situation reports from France. Churchill had been managing coalition politics for years. He respected American industrial might and manpower, but British military leadership, trained in centuries of warfare, privately questioned whether American generals truly understood the art of war. Churchill himself had served in combat, understood military operations intimately, and trusted British intelligence assessments. So, when he read that American forces might take 2 weeks to exploit Cobra's success, he accepted it. He wrote to General Sir Alan Brooke, Chief of the Imperial General Staff, "If the Americans can break out, our chaps must be ready to exploit on the eastern flank. We cannot allow the enemy to stabilize, but I suspect the Americans will move methodically, which gives us time to coordinate." July 28, 1944. The first reports reached London that shattered every prediction. Patton's forces hadn't spent 2 weeks reorganizing. They hadn't moved methodically. They had smashed through German positions and were advancing at speeds that seemed impossible. British intelligence officers at Shah Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force, received reports from reconnaissance units. American armor was moving 20, 30, 40 meals per day. Entire German divisions were being bypassed, surrounded, destroyed. The American Third Army wasn't conducting a careful exploitation. They were conducting a blitzkrieg. Major General Kenneth Strong, Eisenhower's chief of intelligence, reviewed the reports with disbelief. He later wrote in his memoir, The speed of Patton's advance defied every calculation. We had based our assessments on how German panzer divisions operated in 1940. Patton was moving faster, not just faster than we predicted, faster than the Germans ever had. When these reports reached Churchill on July 29th, his reaction was recorded by his secretary, John Coville. Churchill read the intelligence summary twice, then looked up and said, "Patton is moving how fast? This can't be accurate. No army moves that quickly without collapsing its supply lines or losing cohesion. Are we certain these reports are reliable?" Coville confirmed multiple sources. Churchill stood and walked to his map of France. He studied Patton's advance, then said quietly, "If this is true, if the Americans can actually sustain this pace, then we are witnessing something unprecedented." The question is whether Patton is brilliant or reckless, perhaps both. British intelligence scrambled to update their assessments. On August 1st, when Third Army officially became operational under Patton's command, a new intelligence summary reached Churchill. It revised previous estimates dramatically. General Patton's forces are advancing at unprecedented operational tempo. Previous assessments underestimated American logistical capabilities and operational aggression. Third Army has covered distances in 72 hours that we estimated would require 10 to 14 days. If this pace continues, American forces will reach objectives weeks ahead of schedule. Churchill read this summary in his underground war rooms. His chief military assistant, General Hastings Ismay, was present. Ismay later recorded that Churchill put down the report and said, "Gentlemen, I believe we have underestimated the Americans. Not their courage, which was never in doubt, but their capacity for operational warfare at speed. Patton is proving something uncomfortable." Perhaps the British way of warfare, careful, methodical, based on set-piece operations, is no longer the most effective approach. August 1st through August 7th, 1944. Patton's Third Army swept across Brittany and central France like a storm. British planners had estimated it would take 3 weeks to secure Brittany. Patton sealed it off in 6 days and kept moving east. The Seine River, which British intelligence predicted wouldn't be threatened until late August, came under American pressure in the first week of August. Each day brought new reports that shocked British commanders. On August 3rd, Third Army advanced 35 mi. On August 4th, 40 mi German defenses weren't just being penetrated, they were collapsing. At 21st Army Group headquarters, Montgomery received daily updates on Patton's progress. Montgomery, proud, meticulous, and deeply invested in British military prestige, found himself in an awkward position. His own forces were making steady progress around Cone, but nothing approaching Patton's speed. British officers began whispering that the Americans were showing them up. One British liaison officer with Third Army sent a report to Montgomery's headquarters that was remarkably candid. "Patton's army operates unlike any force I have observed. There is apparent chaos, units bypassing objectives, supply lines stretched thin, commanders making decisions without waiting for orders. Yet, somehow it works. Patton has instilled an operational culture where speed matters more than security, where aggression overcomes caution, where taking risks is expected. Our doctrine emphasizes consolidation before exploitation. Patton's doctrine is continuous exploitation. The Germans cannot respond because they never get time to stabilize." Montgomery forwarded this report to Churchill with a brief note. "The Americans are having success. Their methods are unorthodox by our standards, but effective nonetheless." Churchill read this on August 5th. He called a meeting of his military chiefs. General Brooke, Field Marshal, Sir John Dill, and others gathered at 10 Downing Street. Churchill opened bluntly. "Gentlemen, Patton is advancing faster than we thought possible. He is making our intelligence assessments look foolish and frankly making British forces look slow by comparison. I need to understand what is happening. Are the Americans simply facing weaker resistance? Is Patton's advance sustainable, or have we fundamentally misunderstood American military capabilities?" General Brooke, who had privately expressed doubts about American generalship, was defensive. "Prime Minister Patton is taking risks. His supply lines are overextended. His flanks are exposed. He is bypassing German strongpoints that could cut his communications. This is not sound military practice. If the Germans counterattack effectively, Patton's army could be isolated and destroyed." Churchill listened, then responded, and his words were recorded in the meeting minutes. "Alan, I hear clear's throat, your concerns. They are valid from a doctrinal perspective, but here is what troubles me. Patton has been taking these risks for 2 weeks. We keep predicting his advance will stall. It hasn't. We keep warning about overextension, yet he keeps moving. Perhaps what we call untold practice is actually a new form of warfare. Perhaps Patton understands something we don't. The Germans created blitzkrieg. They taught us that speed and aggression can overwhelm careful defense. Now, an American general is using those same principles, but faster and more aggressively than the Germans ever did. We need to consider the possibility that our military thinking has become too cautious, too methodical. Patton may be showing us the future of warfare, and we are judging him by standards of the past." The room was silent. For Churchill, usually a champion of British military excellence, to suggest that American methods might be superior was extraordinary. After the meeting, Churchill asked Brooke to remain. In private, Churchill was more direct. "Alan, I need you to understand something. This war will be won or lost based on how quickly we can defeat Germany. If Patton can move 3 times faster than we estimated, that changes everything. It means the war could end months earlier than we planned. It means American forces will liberate more of Europe than we anticipated. And it means politically that American military contribution will be seen as decisive. This isn't just about tactics, it's about the post-war world. If American military power proves overwhelmingly superior, British influence will diminish accordingly. We need to decide whether to compete with Patton's pace or acknowledge American military ascendancy." August 8th to August 20th, 1944. The Files Pocket battle began. German forces were trapped between British, Canadian, and American forces. Patton's Third Army had advanced so quickly that they were in position to close the pocket from the south weeks ahead of schedule. Churchill traveled to France on August 12th to observe operations firsthand. He visited Montgomery's headquarters, then requested to visit Patton's command post. The contrast was striking. Montgomery's headquarters was organized, methodical, with detailed maps and careful planning. Patton's headquarters was kinetic energy barely controlled. Officers rushed between rooms. Maps were updated hourly. Patton himself was constantly moving, calling subordinates, issuing orders, demanding faster movement. Churchill observed for several hours. Afterward, in his temporary quarters, he dictated observations to Coville. Patton is unlike any British general. He commands through personality and relentless drive rather than through systematic staff work. His headquarters reflects his personality, chaotic to British eyes, but effective. I asked him how he maintains supply to such distant spearheads. He said, "Prime Minister, I don't wait for supplies to arrive. I seize enemy supplies and keep moving. If my men need fuel, they take it from German depots. If they need food, they take it from French towns. Waiting for supply convoys is how you lose momentum. This is not how we operate, but it is working." Churchill met privately with Patton on August the 13th. The conversation recorded in Churchill's papers revealed his complex assessment. "General Patton, I must congratulate you on an extraordinary campaign. You have advanced farther and faster than our intelligence assessed possible. You have exceeded every prediction. I am curious. How do you sustain this pace? Do you not worry about overextension, about German counterattacks on your flanks?" Patton's reply was characteristically blunt. "Mr. Prime Minister, I worry constantly, but I worry more about giving the Germans time to organize. Speed is my security. If I move fast enough, the enemy never has time to prepare effective resistance. They are always reacting, never acting. That keeps them off balance. The moment I slow down to consolidate, I give them the advantage." Churchill pressed further. "But surely there are limits. Logistics, fuel, ammunition. These cannot be conjured from thin air." Patton smiled. "Prime Minister, logistics follow success. If I wait for perfect logistics before attacking, I never attack. If I attack and succeed, logistics find a way. My staff knows I will keep advancing. Their job is to keep me supplied. They work miracles because they have no choice." Churchill later wrote of this exchange, "Patton represents a distinctly American approach to warfare. Improvisation over planning, aggression over caution, individual initiative over systematic coordination. It is alien to British military culture. Yet it is devastatingly effective against the Germans. I find myself wondering whether British doctrine developed over centuries has become obsolete in the face of mechanized high-speed warfare. This is not a comfortable thought. On August 15th, Churchill witnessed Patton's forces helping to close the Falaise pocket. The speed with which American units repositioned, the aggression with which they attacked impressed him deeply. He sent a message to President Roosevelt that evening. "Franklin, your General Patton is proving to be a remarkable battlefield commander. His advance across France has been the most rapid exploitation I have witnessed in 2 wars. While British and Canadian forces are performing admirably, there is no question that Third Army's pace is extraordinary. The Americans are showing operational capabilities that exceed our initial assessments. You should be very proud." August 25, 1944, Paris was liberated. Patton's forces were already beyond Paris, racing toward the German border. British intelligence updated their assessments again. The Seine River, predicted to be a major obstacle requiring weeks to cross, had been crossed by Third Army in a matter of days. The Meuse River, not expected to be threatened until mid-September, was already under threat in late August. Every single timeline prediction had been shattered. On August 26th, Churchill convened his war cabinet. He addressed them with unusual candor, and the meeting minutes captured his words precisely. "Gentlemen, we must acknowledge facts. General Patton has conducted the most rapid advance by any army in modern history. He has covered 600 miles in 1 month. He has liberated more French territory than all other Allied forces combined. He has captured or destroyed 3 German armies. Our intelligence consistently underestimated him. Our commanders, though successful, have not matched his pace. This has political and strategic implications we must consider." Churchill outlined those implications. First, American military dominance was becoming undeniable. Second, British prestige was suffering by comparison. Third, the post-war balance of power was shifting toward America faster than anticipated. He was brutally honest. "We fought this war to preserve Britain's position in the world. We are winning the war. But American military performance, symbolized by Patton's advance, is demonstrating that American power has eclipsed British power. This is the reality we face." Foreign Secretary Anthony Eden asked Churchill directly, "Prime Minister, what is your assessment of Patton personally?" Churchill's response was lengthy and revealing. "Patton is a paradox. He is crude, egotistical, often insubordinate. He says things that make diplomats cringe. He has caused political problems for Eisenhower repeatedly. Yet on the battlefield, he is a genius. Not in the careful, systematic way we British understand military genius. His genius is in speed, aggression, and the ability to impose his will on events rather than react to them. He fights the way Nelson commanded at sea with audacity that seems reckless until it succeeds, and then seems inevitable." Churchill continued, "I have watched British generals carefully plan operations for weeks. Patton plans in hours and executes immediately. British doctrine emphasizes securing objectives fully before advancing. Patton secures nothing fully. He keeps moving, keeps attacking, keeps the enemy off balance. By our standards, it is unsound, but by results, it is devastatingly effective. I suspect that if British generals attempted Patton's methods, they would fail because our entire military culture is built on different principles. Patton succeeds because American military culture values individual initiative and accepts risk in ways we do not. This may be their great advantage." September 1944, Patton's advance finally slowed, not because of German resistance, but because Supreme Headquarters allocated fuel and supplies to Montgomery's Operation Market Garden instead. This created tension between American and British commanders. Churchill found himself mediating. On September 10th, he met with Eisenhower and advocated for supporting Montgomery's northern thrust. But privately, Churchill had doubts. He wrote to Field Marshal Smuts in South Africa, one of his closest confidants. "Jan, I am supporting Monty's operation publicly because British prestige requires it. But between us, I believe Patton could have reached the German border and possibly crossed the Rhine if he had received the support Montgomery is getting. Patton has proven he can advance faster than anyone predicted. Montgomery has proven he can plan carefully. In mobile warfare, Patton's approach may be superior, but politically I cannot say this publicly. When Market Garden failed in late September, Churchill's assessment of Patton became more favorable. He wrote in his diary on September 28, "Market Garden has demonstrated that careful planning is not sufficient without speed of execution." Patton would have never attempted such a complex multi-day operation. He would have smashed forward at one point with overwhelming force and speed, giving the enemy no time to react. Perhaps there is wisdom in his brutality. By October 1944, Churchill's public and private statements about Patton had evolved significantly. Publicly, he praised all Allied commanders equally. Privately, he acknowledged Patton's exceptional ability. In a letter to King George I's success, Churchill wrote, "The American General Patton has proven to be one of the outstanding battlefield commanders of this war. His advance across France will be studied by military historians for generations. While his methods are unconventional by British standards, his results are undeniable. We are fortunate he is on our side." In November 1944, fuel shortages halted major operations across the front. Patton, furious at being stopped by logistics rather than Germans, protested constantly. Churchill, visiting Allied headquarters, witnessed one of Patton's tirades about supply allocations. Afterward, Churchill remarked to Eisenhower, and the comment was recorded by Eisenhower's aide. Ike. "Patton reminds me of Nelson complaining about the Admiralty's caution. Both men believed their genius was being constrained by lesser minds. Both were probably right. Nelson won Trafalgar by ignoring orders. Patton would win faster if given more resources. Managing such men is your burden. Be grateful you have them to manage." December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge began. German forces launched a massive surprise offensive through the Ardennes. Once again, Patton demonstrated his extraordinary capability. Churchill was briefed on December 19th about Patton's promise to disengage 3 divisions, pivot 90 degrees, and attack north within 48 hours. British intelligence officers told Churchill this was impossible. Churchill's response, recorded by his secretary, was telling. "Gentlemen, you told me Patton couldn't advance across France as quickly as he did. You told me he was overextended. You told me his methods were unsound. He proved you wrong every time. If Patton says he will attack in 48 hours, I believe him. Do not underestimate that man again." When Patton actually relieved Bastogne on December 26th, Churchill sent him a personal telegram. "General Patton, your relief of Bastogne is an achievement that will echo through military history. Once again, you have accomplished what others deemed impossible. Britain salutes your Third Army's courage, speed, and fighting spirit. Well done." Churchill also sent a message to Eisenhower. "Ike Patton has once again demonstrated why he is irreplaceable. Whatever his faults, and they are many, his battlefield performance exceeds all others. Cherish him, manage him, but above all, use him. Commanders like Patton appear once in a generation." January 1945. The Allied counteroffensive following the Battle of the Bulge saw Patton's forces advancing again. British forces were making progress, but slower. Churchill visited the front in mid-January and observed both British and American operations. His diary entry from January 18th was remarkably candid. "I have watched British soldiers fight with tremendous courage and skill. They are the equal of any soldiers in the world. But I must acknowledge that American operational tempo, exemplified by Patton's Third Army, represents something new in warfare. We British plan carefully, advance methodically, secure our objectives fully. The Americans, or at least Patton's Americans, attack constantly, accept risk willingly, and maintain a pace that overwhelms German attempts to stabilize. This is not a criticism of British methods. It is recognition that warfare has evolved, and the Americans have evolved with it faster than we have." Churchill recognized the deeper truth. British military power developed over centuries, was designed for a different era. American military power, newer and less bound by tradition, was proving more adaptable to mechanized warfare. This was difficult for Churchill, a proud British patriot, to accept, but accept it he did. March 1945. Patton's Third Army crossed the Rhine on March 22nd, ahead of schedule and ahead of Montgomery's more publicized crossing. Churchill visited Patton's headquarters on March 24th. He wanted to cross the Rhine himself, and Patton arranged it. They crossed together in an assault boat under occasional German fire. Afterward, both men urinated in the Rhine, a gesture of contempt for Germany. Churchill later wrote of this experience. Crossing the Rhine with Patton was exhilarating. The man is 60 years old, but acts like a young lieutenant. His energy, his aggression, his absolute confidence are infectious. I understood in that moment why his soldiers follow him. He doesn't ask them to do anything he wouldn't do himself, and he genuinely believes he is invincible. That belief becomes reality. That evening, Patton hosted Churchill at his headquarters. They talked late into the night. Churchill asked Patton about his philosophy of warfare. Patton's answer, recorded in Churchill's papers, was revealing. "Mr. Prime Minister, war is simple. Attack always. Attack everywhere. Never give the enemy rest. Make him react to you instead of acting himself. Speed matters more than perfect planning. Aggression matters more than security. If you hit first, hit hard, and keep hitting, the enemy collapses. All the fancy theories about warfare come down to that. Hit them before they hit you." Churchill reflected on this. Patton's philosophy is almost primitive in its simplicity, yet it works because he executes it with absolute conviction and extraordinary energy. Perhaps warfare at its essence is simple, and we British have overcomplicated it with doctrine and procedure. April 1945, as Allied forces drove into Germany, Patton's advance continued at remarkable pace. He was averaging 15 to 20 meals per day deep inside German territory. British forces were advancing successfully but more slowly. Churchill, preparing for post-war negotiations with Stalin, was acutely aware that territory occupied at war's end would influence post-war boundaries. Patton's speed meant American forces would occupy vast areas of Germany and potentially Czechoslovakia. Churchill wrote to Roosevelt on April 15, "Franklin, your General Patton's rapid advance is strategically important for post-war considerations. The areas he liberates will be in the American zone. The faster he advances, the less territory falls under Soviet control." From this perspective, Patton's aggressive pace serves broader strategic interests beyond tactical considerations. I commend his speed. May 7, 1945, Germany surrendered. The war in Europe was over. Churchill immediately began assessing the war's lessons and key figures. In his first post-war statement, he praised all Allied commanders, but in private correspondence, he was more specific about Patton. To Field Marshal Montgomery, Churchill wrote on May 10th, "Monty, you commanded brilliantly and deserve great credit. But I must be honest, Patton's operational performance exceeded everyone's. His speed, his aggression, his ability to exploit opportunities made him the outstanding American ground commander. History will judge you both by results. Your results were excellent. His were extraordinary." To General Eisenhower, Churchill wrote on May 12th, "Ike, now that the shooting has stopped, I can be frank. Managing coalition command was your great achievement, but you were blessed with subordinates of exceptional ability. Patton was the most difficult and most brilliant. His advance across France shortened the war by months. His relief of Bastonia saved the Ardennes campaign. His drive into Germany demonstrated American military power conclusively. He frustrated you constantly, but he won battles no one else could win. That is the definition of military genius." Years after the war, Churchill reflected extensively on Patton. In his war memoirs, The Second World War, Churchill devoted significant attention to Patton's campaigns. He wrote, "General Patton was an extraordinary figure. In an age of careful planning and systematic operations, he relied on speed, aggression, and personal leadership. His methods seemed outdated, almost 19th century in their emphasis on individual commanders acting decisively. Yet, those methods proved devastatingly effective in 20th century mechanized warfare. Patton demonstrated that speed and aggression could overcome careful defense, that rapid exploitation could destroy enemy armies before they could recover, and that continuous offensive action could paralyze enemy command structures. These were not new ideas, but Patton applied them with an intensity and consistency that no other Allied commander matched." Churchill continued, "When Patton began his advance across France in August 1944, British intelligence predicted he would require weeks to reach objectives he reached in days. Every assessment underestimated him. This was not a failure of intelligence. It was a failure to comprehend that Patton operated by different rules than other commanders. He accepted risks we considered unacceptable. He maintained a pace we considered unsustainable. Yet his methods worked. By war's end, Third Army had advanced farther, captured more territory, and destroyed more enemy forces than any other Allied army. These are facts, not opinions. In a 1950 interview, Churchill was asked to name the most impressive Allied general he encountered during the war. His answer surprised many. That is a difficult question because we were blessed with many excellent commanders. Montgomery, Alexander, Eisenhower, Bradley, all distinguished themselves. But if I must name one who exceeded all predictions and accomplished what others deemed impossible, I would say George Patton. He was difficult, controversial, politically troublesome. But on the battlefield, he was simply the best. He understood something fundamental about modern warfare that others didn't. Speed and aggression create opportunities that careful planning cannot anticipate. Patton never waited for perfect conditions. He attacked with what he had when he could, wherever he saw opportunity. That relentless, offensive spirit won battles. Churchill also acknowledged his own evolution. I confess that initially I underestimated the Americans. We British had been fighting since 1939. We had experience the Americans lacked. I assumed American commanders would require time to learn warfare's harsh lessons. Patton proved that wrong. He didn't need to learn. He already understood. His advance across France in 1944 taught me something important. Military excellence is not a monopoly of any nation or tradition. The Americans brought fresh thinking unburdened by European military traditions. In Patton's case, that fresh thinking manifested as unprecedented operational speed. I learned not to underestimate American military innovation. In his final assessment written in 1953, Churchill was unequivocal. History will remember many commanders from the Second World War, but few will have their operational achievements studied as intensively as Patton. His advance across France represented a new standard for mechanized warfare. His relief of Bastogne demonstrated operational flexibility under crisis. His drive into Germany showed what determined aggressive leadership could accomplish. Britain produced many fine commanders during the war. America produced Patton. In the final analysis, his operational genius may have exceeded them all. This is not diminishing British achievements. It is acknowledging exceptional American performance. Churchill's evolution from skeptic to admirer reflected broader British recognition of American military capability. In August 1944, British intelligence predicted Patton would take 3 weeks to reach objectives he reached in 6 days. By May 1945, British commanders acknowledged that American operational tempo had redefined modern warfare. Patton became the symbol of that redefinition. Churchill, ever the realist, accepted this truth even as it complicated his vision of post-war British power. Perhaps Churchill's most telling comment came in private conversation with Field Marshal Alan Brooke in 1951. Brooke recorded the exchange. Churchill said, "Alan, you warned me repeatedly that Patton was taking unsustainable risks. You predicted his advance would collapse. It never did. We were wrong. Patton was right. This bothered me for years." How could British military judgment be so consistently wrong about an American general? I finally understood. We judge Patton by our standards, our doctrine, our experience. But Patton wasn't operating by our standards. He created his own standard. Speed as security, aggression as strategy, continuous offense as the solution to all tactical problems. By his standard, his methods were sound. By our standard, they were reckless. But his standard won battles faster than ours did. That is an uncomfortable lesson, but a true one. The ultimate British military judgment on Patton came from the institution that initially doubted him. British Staff College, which trains British military officers, added Patton's campaigns to their curriculum in 1947. The official teaching material stated, "General Patton's operations represent a departure from traditional British operational doctrine. His emphasis on speed over consolidation, aggression over security, and continuous exploitation over systematic advance contradict established principles. However, his consistent success across multiple campaigns requires serious study. British officers must understand that alternative operational approaches can be equally or more effective than traditional methods. Patton's campaigns demonstrate that operational tempo maintained relentlessly can achieve results that methodical operations cannot match." This was remarkable. The British military establishment, proud of centuries of martial tradition, was acknowledging that an American general had demonstrated superior operational methods. That acknowledgement came directly from British experiences watching Patton exceed every prediction. Churchill's words, both public and private, reflected and reinforced this acknowledgement. He began as a skeptic, confident in British military superiority. He ended as an admirer, recognizing that American innovation in warfare had created something unprecedented. Patton forced that evolution. Every time British intelligence predicted he would take weeks, he took days. Every time they warned his advance was unsustainable, he sustained it. Every time they cautioned about overextension, he extended further and succeeded. Churchill's final written assessment of Patton appeared in a 1956 letter to Eisenhower. Eisenhower had sent Churchill a draft of his memoirs asking for comments. Churchill responded, "Ike, your chapter on Patton is excellent, but perhaps too diplomatic. You should be more direct about his exceptional ability. Future generations need to understand that Patton accomplished what others deemed impossible. His advance across France, his relief of Bastonia, his drive into Germany, these operations redefined operational warfare. You managed him brilliantly, but he won battles. That is his legacy. Be bolder in saying so." Eisenhower took Churchill's advice. The published memoir included stronger praise for Patton. The relationship between Churchill and Patton was never close personally. They met only a handful of times. But Churchill's assessment of Patton evolved from skepticism to admiration based solely on operational results. This may be the highest praise one military commander can give another. No personal friendship, no political calculation, just recognition of exceptional battlefield performance. Churchill, who had studied military history entire life, who had served in combat, who had commanded British forces as political leader, acknowledged that Patton's operational genius exceeded British commanders. That acknowledgement coming from Churchill carries tremendous weight. If this deep dive into how Churchill confronted Patton's impossible speed fascinated you, then subscribe to this channel right now and hit that notification bell. We're bringing you the untold stories from World War II, the private words of history's greatest leaders, and the moments that changed everything. Coming up, we have incredible content about other times when Allied commanders exceeded all predictions. Battles where the impossible became reality, and the complex relationships between Churchill and American generals. Drop a comment telling us what topic you want explored next. Should we cover what Stalin said when Patton wanted to fight the Soviets? What German generals said about other Allied commanders? The tensions between Montgomery and Patton from both perspectives? Your suggestions drive our content. If you found this video valuable, smash that like button and share it with anyone who appreciates real military history, told through the actual words of the people who lived it. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes what looks impossible is just something nobody's had the audacity to attempt yet. The difference between impossible and inevitable is often just one person willing to.